This episode is brought to you by Progressive, a leader in boat insurance. Welcome aboard to Carefree Boating. Here, we don't worry about the what-ifs, because we explore with Progressive Boat Insurance for as little as $100 per year for a basic liability policy. Progressive also offers a variety of other coverages and can help you cover repair costs when you need it. And with discounts like multi-policy, safety courses, responsible driver, and more, your mind can really float free. Cruise on over to Progressive.com to get a quote today and see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Rate and discounts not available in all states or situations.
It's extraordinary what people say they saw at Ford's Theater that night. John Wilkes Booth was a megastar.
The American political climate has always been rife with division, but even juxtaposed against today's polarized environment, it has never been nearly as divided as it was during the Civil War. I'm Alec Baldwin. This is a story that shows how the lines are so often blurred between hero and villain, immortality and infamy, justice and vengeance, and how in that respect nothing has changed today. Listen to The Ides of April, starting July 23rd, wherever you get your podcasts.
Pie in the Sky Media. This series contains adult language and descriptions of graphic violence throughout. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to Criminal Mischief with Carolyn and Brandon. In our bonus episode last week, Brandon and I teased the upcoming release of our new show, Stolen Voices of Dole Valley, a podcast series about a Washington state serial killer you've never heard of. Here's the audio trailer for Stolen Voices of Dole Valley.
It's actually affected my whole life. That somebody could take a 15-year-old child and terrorize her, tie her to a tree, abuse her, and what kind of a freak could do that?
In July of 1974, a 15-year-old girl named Norma Jean Countryman chewed through the rope that bound her to a tree deep in the woods of Washington state.
I used my front teeth to saw on the rope in my mouth.
It was either that or die at the hands of an unknown serial killer prowling the Pacific Northwest in the early 1970s.
It was pretty traumatic. She, literally crawled out of her grave. It was just a miracle that she survived.
The Stolen Voices of Dole Valley is a new podcast that will take you on a journey that spans more than half a century and chronicles the horrible deeds of a serial killer who's only been convicted of 2 murders, but he's suspected of many more.
If he had dumped 2, you would have thought maybe there's another one in that area.
Crimes committed by a man with a knack for escaping justice. And our investigation exposed consistent shortcomings on the part of law enforcement.
If I'd gone up to that place in the next couple of days, I would have seen that van, because if I had, a couple more ladies would be alive.
A victim who was dismissed.
The people that she should have trusted didn't believe her. How horrible.
Crucial leads that went uninvestigated, and important evidence that went missing.
I could not make that detective believe me. Even though I had given him everything, he had already dismissed me as a juvenile delinquent. When he said, "I don't believe your story," I just shut down.
Stolen Voices of Dole Valley is a story of callous murder, but also incredible survival.
That's what I'm an advocate for, are the victims who don't have voices anymore, the ones that have never been found.
But there is hope. A dedicated team of investigators who refuse to give up now have science on their side.
We definitely want to pursue DNA evidence.
We know this guy is a serial killer, so they may be one of these suspected victims, or they could be a victim that we have no idea he killed.
From Pie in the Sky Media, KSL Podcasts, and Lemonada Media comes your next true crime obsession. A serial killer you've never heard of. Victims and survivors you won't be able to forget.
Whoever she is, even if it's not my sister, her family is agonizing over who she is, and she was killed by the same killer who murdered my sister.
Follow Stolen Voices of Dole Valley wherever you listen to podcasts. Stolen Voices of Dole Valley drops on August 19th. Be sure to subscribe to the show right now on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss an episode. Now, one of the things that drew me to the Stolen Voices of Dole Valley investigation were the people who'd experienced profound trauma related to that investigation, and yet refused to let that define them or their lives, going on to do incredibly brave and powerful things in big and small ways. I have always been drawn to people like that and their stories, which brings me to my guest today.
To be honest, I think a lot of it came from childhood experiences. I grew up without a dad around and a sort of a broken relationship. There were no really dominant, outspoken, bold men. Most of the men in my life were very passive. I grew up with a mom and a big sister. My grandma was the matriarch of the family, 3 aunts. I wanted to be the person who actually ran into the room to rescue someone, and kind of identify as a protector.
In this week's episode of Criminal Mischief, you'll hear my conversation with retired FBI SWAT sniper team leader Jeremy Rebmann.
I love writing. I love good literature. And it was kind of cathartic to sit down after an op and write things that went well, things that went poorly, what I would do differently. And then a lot of times I'd write about just a funny thing that happened. And then when I retired, I think part of the therapy for myself, I knew it was time to retire, and I didn't regret retiring, but man, I missed the camaraderie a lot. And nothing was really filling that void. And so I just started to write.
Jeremy's new book, titled Send Me, gets you about as close as most of us would ever want to come to understanding what it's actually like to be a member of the FBI SWAT team. I'm going to read you a couple of excerpts from his new book. Put your hands up. Do not reach for the gun, I ordered. I knew the shield I was carrying could protect my torso, but Frosty and Mackie were only partially protected by my shield. Besides being concerned for them, I tried to quash visions of a stray bullet hitting my exposed legs, severing my femoral artery, and bleeding me out in 120 seconds. My left hand was wrapped around the grip inside the massive level 4 shield, and I lined up the sights of my .45 by looking through the bulletproof window at the top of the shield. He took another small shuffle toward the gun. I was in disbelief. He's still going for the gun? Maybe he doesn't understand how this will play out. I decided to word it differently. I flipped on my .45's laser and made small circles on his chest. He looked angry and scared at the same time. I had seen big, crazy eyes like that before, from a feral cat caught in a trap. He took another step closer to the gun. Don't! I'm not kidding. I'll fucking kill you. My tone wasn't angry. It was sincere and matter of fact. He could grab that gun in under 1 second. I put my finger on the trigger of my .45. Vulture's rifle was pointing through the window in the front of the house, and my teammates were behind me, but no one had the shot but me. The subject and I locked eyes for a moment. Then he suddenly seemed to understand he had only one choice: live or die. Both of his hands went fully into the air, and the tension in his shoulders drained away. He didn't want to die today. Thank God. Here, Jeremy describes the complicated emotions of being a sniper. The bittersweet concoction of gloom and success after killing a man is difficult to deal with. You have spent countless hours sweating or freezing, enduring pain and boredom so that you can be successful if you are ever called upon. The purpose of being a skilled sniper is to save lives by neutralizing someone who would otherwise be a murderer. Yet when it happens, you are still overcome with the upsetting knowledge that you have separated the spirit from the body and left behind a mangled sack of meat. I've talked to other snipers, and the feeling of, oh, man, I'm in trouble, was common in all of us, even when we were certain it was a righteous shooting. The ugly truth is that there is tremendous satisfaction in knowing that you were capable of doing what you had unrelentingly trained to do. For many of us, we have spent 5, 10, even 20 years scrimmaging, training, testing, shooting, crawling, running, learning ballistic data, reading the wind, and knowing our dope. Finally, when the day comes, after hours of blinking away dirt, wishing you had some more water, laying on cactus and rocks that are your unwelcoming bed, one framed second in time presents itself to you, camouflaged by hours of sitting perfectly still and silent. In a flash, the moment comes and goes, and you know that your training was worth it. You are, all in the same instant, proud, relieved, worried, and uncomfortable that you killed a man, and overjoyed that you didn't let him kill your brothers. In my interview with Jeremy, we talked about how and why he got into the FBI. First on the SWAT team, and later he trained to become a sniper. But also where his desire to be a protector came from, and what happened once that role was over and he retired. That he eventually found new footing in civilian life by volunteering in his community and writing a book. He says that during 21 years on the team, I learned how to breach a pressurized aircraft, drive a locomotive, fly an airplane, rescue a hostage, disarm a nuke, treat a gunshot wound, and how to hit a target a half a mile away. But the important thing was that I learned servant leadership. I learned how to follow willingly and how to lead with humility. Everyone had earned a place on the team, yet each team member put himself last. Here's our conversation. Let's talk about getting into sniper training and kind of it sounds like your career was robust and you did a lot of different stuff.
So one of the things I talk about in the book is that, for starters, the average new special agent in the FBI is 31 years old. So your rookie kids are 31.
How old were you?
I was 27. I was the second youngest person in my class. So these are people they're coming out of special operations. They're doctors, bankers, like successful people that have left to join the FBI. So once you're in the FBI, then it's an 18-month process just to get off probation, and then you can try out for SWAT. So by the time a lot of guys are on the FBI SWAT team, they're in their mid-30s. So, which for me, I was lucky I got on at 29, and I was like a young kid.
So you're just doing training and training and training, and then you get into your specialty, which is what you want to do.
Yeah, and actually that first 18 months is focused on the core mission of what an FBI agent does, which is collect facts and document them. It's literally the core job is what's the truth, prove the truth, write it down. So for those first 18 months, they don't want you to be a pilot or a sniper or on the evidence team or a negotiator or anything. Those first 18 months, they just want you to solve crimes.
What did that look like to you?
For me, it's kind of an important distinction. The big FBI offices are called field offices, and there's 56 of them. And I never worked out of a field office. I worked out of a little satellite office called a resident agency my whole 23 years. But for most agents who work in a field office, they're on a squad, and that squad is literally what you do. Bank robbery squad, white collar squad, counterintelligence squad. When I first came in, there were drug squads. Now there's cyber squads. So in a little resident agency where I worked, they assigned me a territory, and they said, these 3 or 4 or 5 counties, these are your people, and everything that you can do to help these people, do it. So within my first few weeks, I had cold case files, bank robberies, fugitives, assault on Indian land, some counterterrorism operations. So I never focused on anything outside the tactical world. As far as investigative, I was always a generalist, working whatever cases were important to my territory.
So, but you went into the FBI thinking, I want to go into SWAT. That's what I want to
Yeah.
do. What was the fuel behind that choice?
I think, I'd been in the military and went from working on the flight line to being an Air Force OSI special agent. OSI is the Office of Special Investigations. It's very much the FBI of the Air Force.
Mm.
And it was great. I loved it. It was plain clothes. We worked great cases, but there wasn't much of a tactical program because posse comitatus laws. The military is not supposed to enforce law on civilians, and they shouldn't. For good reason, soldiers shouldn't enforce law on civilians. So there isn't and never will be a robust tactical program in OSI. And I started meeting FBI agents, working joint cases with them.
This is when you were in the military.
Yeah, so I'm an Air Force OSI special agent wearing plain clothes and working cases with FBI agents whose office is down the street. And one of the guys I was working in a public corruption case with just popped his trunk and I saw this arsenal of gear, just weapons. And, I thought, holy crap, this is hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. And he's like, oh yeah, I'm on the FBI SWAT team.
So
and I thought,
what was in there? What about all that gear? Are you just the gearhead? Like, were you always like what was just the little boy in you like, wow, that seems like that would be really cool to have all that gear. Like, walk me through that.
I think it was innate because my family, my parents were professors. My sister's an engineer. No one in my family is military and law enforcement unless they were drafted. And I just am this way. I just thought, man, if there's a way I can serve, if I can literally be a protector as my job, that's what I want to do.
So you're a protector.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And that makes sense. That tracks with your second career of helping other people.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay. So you see all that gear and you're like, as soon as my tour is done with the OSI, that's when I want to go into FBI. And when you went there, was it like what you thought it would be?
It was different. I don't know if you've ever seen the Keanu Reeves movie Point Break. Yeah. And he's like, he's telling a supervisor, I peel the skin off chicken, sir. It's very much a military sort of, I'm a rookie agent and the supervisor is sort of my commander. And I joined the bureau and it is not the military. I mean, there's supervisors, but there's not a rank structure. So my first day in the big office, they bring me to the headquarters office to meet the bosses. I'm waiting to talk to my boss, and the office next to his, I can see what just appears to be a street agent just wearing his business attire with his gun, and he's standing across from a supervisor at a desk. And the supervisor, you can tell, is telling him, I expect this to be done. I expect this to be done. And the street agent says, I'm not fucking doing that and quit asking me. And walked out. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's about to get fired or something. And I asked my training agent, what just happened? And he's like, he's a old crusty senior agent. There's a point where you can tell your supervisor no if they have bad ideas.
Did you like that? Or as someone who kind of cut their teeth in that military?
I was shell-shocked. I didn't like it because I'd been in the military up until then. What I found out later that I did like is we take an oath to the Constitution and that's it. So I'm sworn to protect the Constitution and I have to obey the Constitution. I should obey my supervisor as long as his direction abides by the Constitution. But it turned out in this case, he was asking him to do something that the agent didn't think was appropriate. And so he was just telling the supervisor, no, I'm not going to because it's wrong. And I thought, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
In the military, you take orders because you have to take orders. And now I'm in this organization where we're doing the right thing, even if it means telling your supervisor no. So it took me a while to embrace that. And you don't cuss your supervisor out. He was a pretty extreme case, but what was behind it, I loved.
I would too, because that's the thing about the military that I always think, I've never served. And if you have a bad leader and you have to follow a bad leader, and what would that be like, even to your death? How do you do that?
Yeah. Right. I mean, yeah. And in the military,
I mean, how would you do that? How would you do that? I mean, I'm asking you, like, if you had a bad leader in the military and they were giving bad orders and you just had to follow them, what is that like?
It's just way, way more complicated because as an officer, then you probably are engaging with the senior NCOs, which kind of have their own rank structure. I've gone to my commander's commander, and asked them if I could talk to them about what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. But at no point can you just look at your commander and say, no, I won't. That's wrong, and I won't. You could, maybe, if it was just over the top. But for the most part, you had to figure out a way to navigate, how do I get out of following this order that I think is inappropriate? Whereas in the FBI, people kind of celebrate that if, you get a bad, there are no orders, I guess, but you get a bad instruction and you say, no, I won't. It's wrong. People celebrate it. They're like, good on you, man.
Well, I can imagine the FBI attracts a lot of different personalities. Like you said, doctors. I mean, don't they want people who have like accounting degrees and law degrees, and like I'm sure it attracts all different types and people who've actually have some real world experience. If the average agent is 31 years old, I mean, they're coming in with some life experience, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's intentional. I think that's the Bureau is looking to recruit people out of successful careers and bring them to the Bureau because they're already successful in their careers. So in my class, there was a biochemist, there was special operations soldiers, like I said, a banker. My roommate was an attorney. Some of us were detectives, and there was a history teacher who I'm still close friends with. But they took these really successful people and said, hey, whether or not you know how to investigate crimes, we'll teach you that. But we're looking for someone with a really strong moral code and who's been around the block long enough to say, I know what's right, I know it's not, and I know how to do the right thing. So I love that about the Bureau. The guys and gals I worked with had this strong moral code, and there was a lot of pride in saying, we're not doing this because it's wrong, and we're doing this because it's the right thing. And I probably still one of my favorite things about the FBI.
So what do you think they saw in you that made them want to select you out of all the applicants?
Man, I don't know. I don't know. I did really well in my interview, I guess. The interview is very long and very intimidating, very complicated. And apparently I did well enough that when I got to my first office, the SEC, the special agent in charge, wanted to meet me. He said, I've never seen anybody score that well in the interview. I want to see what it's like to talk to you. So I don't know. And what's funny is I kind of thought I failed the interview because I was just very candid. I did no fluff. I talked about the things I've done really poorly in my life and regrets I've had. And I thought, I'm screwed. That's probably not the kind of stuff you're supposed to say. Looking back on it, now it makes sense.
Interesting.
I think they were looking at me and
you
they're
were just
like,
being genuine. You were just being genuine because you have to take lie detector tests and all that. There's a huge security process to that. So you just decided to go in there and just be like, this is me? Is that at the end of the day what you did?
I didn't really think they'd take me anyway. I mean, I was going to try. So I just answered questions just completely honestly, even if I had to admit that I made mistakes and did things wrong. And apparently they liked that. So
that was probably a huge adrenaline shot when they not only did you nail it, but I want to meet you. Did that inform you kind of in your career moving forward, that just kind of being yourself?
I think so. And the Bureau,
well.
The Bureau was an environment where I could be myself. I loved being in the military, but I was more comfortable being in civilian law enforcement, where it was less about how your uniform is presented or how a form is filled out. And it was more about what have you really done to help your community? And that charges my battery for my supervisor to say, like, I think this work that you're doing is really helping your community keep after it. And that'll charge me up every time.
Hey, I'm Bruce.
And I'm Jeff. We're here to tell you a little about our new podcast called Taboo Treasures. In Taboo Treasures, we explore the human obsession with objects of extreme rarity and infamy.
Yeah, we're going to get into Barbie, Hitler, one-of-a-kind soccer ball.
And, of course, drugs, guns, murders.
And cults. We hope you'll join us and learn a little and maybe even laugh a little while we tell you some of the stories behind the stories you only think you know.
Okay, you're 18 months in, you get to the SWAT team, you're 27, everybody else is like mid-30s, so you're the young guy.
Yeah, now when I finally get to the team, it's been a couple years, so I'm probably about 29. And so the senior team leaders are in their 40s, and they are, for starters, they're they've been around the block. They've done a lot of higher risk stuff. They were tough guys, but they had great sense of humor. Everyone laughed, and when it was time to laugh and have fun, the guys would laugh and have fun. They would lock it down when it was time to go do something important, but the camaraderie was more than I could have even hoped for. I figured there would be a lot more, "Hey's the new guy, hey rookie." And there was a little bit of that from some guys, but the guys in key leadership positions were like, "Welcome to the team. We're glad to have you here." Like, look, they asked for my input on operations when I was new. That kind of took me by surprise when we would be planning a big tactical operation and the team leaders were asking everybody in the room, "What do you think? What do you think? What would you do different?" And you could be new. Granted, a new guy like me was 29 and had some tactical experience, but it wasn't just sit in the back and be quiet. It was, "Welcome to the team. You've been here for a week. What's your opinion?"
That's what makes success, right?
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, that had to have been like really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were there a lot of women on your team, or was it mostly men?
The team, I worked with female operators that were on sister teams. My team, I spent my entire team in the Oklahoma division for no particular reason other than I just did. A lot of people rotated around the country, around the world, and so I got to meet teammates on different divisional teams. We're all one big team, but we're located in different places. But I worked with females who were always great to work with. So I don't think we ever had a woman try out in my division.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, I think part of it is that there's fewer women, it seems, drawn to law enforcement in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never in the recruiting business in the FBI, but I had heard that one of the reasons we have so many men in the FBI is because you just have more men drawn to it from the beginning. So there's just fewer women to choose from for the SWAT program.
It's a very male dominated place. It hasn't been easy for a lot of women who have, I mean, there's amazing women that are in law enforcement, but it's tough,
Yeah.
I mean, I think like with the CSI, with the Scully effect, once the X-Files came out and more women saw, there was this boon of women who went into forensic sciences. And I think that with law enforcement, that's changing all the time, but I've interviewed quite a few, female detectives over the years, and there's not, there's way more men than there are women, but I hope that changes because women bring such a interesting way to investigate. And and if you've ever seen women interrogate as opposed to men, there's just a totally different kind of process that happens. That's really interesting and very effective. So
I agree.
And when did you become an expert as a sniper? Was that your ultimate goal?
I don't know if anyone's ever an expert as a sniper. I didn't know. I was not initially interested. I turned down sniper school 3 times because I was afraid they were going to put me way out in the boondocks doing Overwatch, which sometimes snipers do, and I wouldn't get to be on the entry team actually physically and literally kicking in doors.
You wanted the action.
And I wanted to be the person who actually ran into the room to rescue someone. And you don't get to do that necessarily if you're a sniper out in the tree line. The part that really started to attract me with the sniper program is the Overwatch program specifically, is because I kind of identify as a protector. The idea of being in the woods, watching over the team and making sure no one ambushes them. So I'm sort of the protector of the protectors. That really drew me in. And I love marksmanship. So the opportunity to get more precise rifles and better training. Eventually I thought, man, I'll go to sniper training, and then I never looked back once I was on the sniper team.
Where does that come from? That yearning to protect others? Were you in the Boy Scouts? Like what? Where do you think that comes from? Let's dig in there.
I don't know if we can dig. If we dig in too deep, I'm gonna need a box of tissues and a therapist probably. So
well, no, seriously, like I do it too in my own way of like things that I choose to want to report on and storytelling in a certain way. What is it about you that, I think it's amazing. Where do you think that comes from?
To be honest, I think a lot of it came from childhood experiences. I grew up without a dad around and a sort of a broken relationship. There were no really dominant, outspoken, bold men. Most of the men in my life were very passive. I grew up with a mom and a big sister. My grandma was the matriarch of the family, 3 aunts, and we'd been robbed more than once. We grew up not poor, but low income. I mean, there were times that we didn't have a place to live. and we were living with family. I had made buddies with guys that had gone into crime. And I think all of that molded me. A big one was our house got broken into and robbed, and the police showed up and did almost nothing. And I remember thinking, we don't have much, but it's gone. One of our prized possessions was my great grandmother's silver collection, and they stole it. And the officer said, yeah, he probably melted it down and sold it for crack. We're not even going to look for it. And they didn't dust for prints. They asked me if I was like 15. They asked me if I had any enemies that would have done this, and then just left. And I thought, that's not what policing is. That's not how you treat someone who's been victimized from a crime. I had sat on my own porch for 3 hours waiting for an officer to show up because they told me it was a low priority case. And I don't know if because we lived in a low income area, I thought if I can ever do that job, I'm going to do it so well. If I can ever protect and care for people, I'll pour myself into it.
It's interesting because like digging deep and turning something like a really negative experience into this positive experience of it's not our successes in life that actually make us, it's the bad stuff that happens that we choose to take a path one way or the next. And so it sounds like that experience of growing up poor has an impact that has led you on the path that you're on today. And so I always love that because it's like bad things happen to you and it's how you choose to move forward with it. That really is everything. I mean, that's not me saying that. That's any good coach, any great leader will say the same thing, right?
I think you're right. Yeah, I do.
Let's talk about the sniper stuff. That's a really technical job. Like when you watch movies, they really make it seem like, okay, all this equipment you're setting up, but like the air and the wind and all. I mean, it's like it's kind of like pilot school, I would imagine, where
a lot
of
pilot training did apply to it, actually. Yeah. The fundamental sniper school is just learn the rifle, learn the equipment, learn to shoot small groups, and then do it over and over again under stress. They would just come up with crazy, stressful, exhausting things, and then you still have to shoot small groups and shoot small groups. Once you start getting to the advanced sniper school, they do get into a lot of the math, atmospherics, and a little bit of that did apply. I remember them saying in your logbook, you need to write down the humidity, you need to write down the temperature, the barometric pressure, the wind velocity and angle. The reflection of the sun can change your perception of a target, the center of a target, and writing all these things in my logbook. And I was at advanced sniper training one time and I was talking to a friend and I said, when you fly a plane, you need to know these things to generate lift. How will the plane fly? Can I get off this runway if it's hot and if it's humid? And I said, as a pilot, you would combine the temperature, barometric pressure, humidity, and just call it density altitude. And that gives you this sort of big picture of, and they were like, that's actually what we're about to teach today in this class is when they taught density altitude, I just thought, yeah, that's exactly how you would determine how a plane would fly. It helps you determine how a bullet would fly. Actually, I love geometry and algebra because I've definitely used Pythagorean theorem and cosines and tangents to calculate, especially angular shooting. I've written letters to my old algebra and geometry teachers and told them, hey, thank you from the cranky kid in the back of the class that was always saying, when am I ever going to use this? I had literally used most of what I learned in geometry and algebra in the last 20 years.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I was an English lit major, so this stuff isn't going to work for me. I couldn't be a sniper, and I wouldn't want to be. But how did you, when you said target practicing and under stress, you're talking in small groups, you're talking about they gave you targets and you had to hit them. You're not talking like small groups all the time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we didn't kill any real people in sniper training. No, we kept that to a minimum. Yeah.
Okay, so then how long were you in sniper training? How long does that take?
The basic training to qualify and have them hand you a rifle and say you're now a sniper, you're allowed to carry this weapon is only 2 weeks. But they're starting with people who, like I said, the Bureau's already stolen them from career fields where they're very successful and they become special agents, and then they've gotten selected for the SWAT team, and now they've been selected for snipers. So at this point, you have really high achieving people. So in 2 weeks, people were hitting moving targets at 400 yards and shooting 1-inch groups at 100 yards. But then the learning never stops. I spent my entire career going to shooting schools and challenging myself, shooting with other agencies. It is one of the things I loved about it is I don't think you ever become an expert sniper. There's always so many more new things to learn. And I, even as a retired sniper, I still shoot competitively and just am overwhelmed with how much I still need to learn to keep up with national class shooters.
You're so humble. Is that kind of like your thing? Like, is that what they liked when you had your interview? Have you just always been humble and just kind of like always want to learn, always want to contribute, always?
I don't know. I don't. I like being part of a team, and obviously I wrote a whole book about it.
Send Me, Chronicles of an FBI Sniper.
It all started, I'd probably been in SWAT for 10 years or so. We would get together for Sunday dinners with my cousins and my aunt and uncle, and one of my cousins would ask me, "Tell me a story about SWAT." And I couldn't think of anything, legitimately, just couldn't. And I'd have to struggle. And so I just thought I should start journaling this stuff. I should write it down. Partly, a lot of these ops start at 2 a.m. You don't encode memories well when you're that tired, and they're under adrenaline. We don't encode memories well when adrenaline is dumping. So I remember the operation, but I don't remember a lot of the vivid details. So I started journaling. I love writing. I love good literature. And it was kind of cathartic to sit down after an op and write things that went well, things that went poorly, what I would do differently. And then a lot of times I'd write about just a funny thing that happened. And then when I retired, I think part of the therapy for myself, I knew it was time to retire, and I didn't regret retiring, but man, I missed the camaraderie a lot, and nothing was really filling that void. And so I just started to write. And then at some point I became discouraged, I think as most writers do. And I thought, this is dumb. Why am I doing this? This will never get done. And a friend of mine said, publish one chapter, take one chapter, ask the Bureau to approve it, and then just throw it out for the world to see. And so I published one chapter of The Glass Mountain, which is about a sniper engagement. And the feedback was way better than I would have ever thought. I got just amazing
feedback.
The feedback
from who? Like
from readers.
And
just leaving Amazon reviews. People would email me. People would text me. Friends of friends would send me screenshots of their friends holding the book and talking about it. And it wasn't just military and police. It was people that had no military experience at all were saying the way you talked about teamwork, servant leadership.
Where did you publish it?
Through Brush Creek Distributors via Amazon.
Okay. And then people just started reading it and reaching out to you, and just people of all different, communities.
Like some warriors, but I had housewives and college students, and people say the way you talked about servant leadership. And that's really, I think that's the core of the book, is this camaraderie by putting others first. And for sure what I miss all the guns and the free ammo and adventures and stuff, but I really miss a group of people that legitimately put themselves last.
Well, when you think of FBI SWAT team, you don't think servant leadership. You know what I mean?
And that's a big reason I wrote the book, is I don't see really any movies or television shows where they portray the FBI SWAT team accurately. And I thought, well, great. I have all this stuff written and I'm getting good feedback. Let's put it all into a book, pick about 12, 13 missions, and then not just explain the adventures of the missions, but how the servant leadership made us successful. And that was the genesis of the book. And it's only been out for 6 weeks, and the feedback has been just amazing. It's really overwhelming.
I mean, obviously, I read within your email, or not your email, but your post, the servant leadership. That's what I was reading. That's what I was keying into. And how do you think the books that you've read, the movies that you've read, get it right with the FBI SWAT team, and how do they get it wrong?
I can start with the second half of that way easier.
Okay, start wherever you want.
The part that I think gets wrong, that movies and TV gets wrong the most, is this FBI agent or FBI SWAT team showing up and saying, "We're here, we're in charge now." That's sort of like, run along, get me a cup of coffee, the FBI is here now, or freaking FBI is taking over the crime scene. And that never happens. It's It's 100% of the time, it's you're here and we're here. How should we handle that? And there is a lot of times where a sheriff or a police chief might say, why don't you guys take control of this crisis? And then we'll rally national resources. So we can fly in resources overnight to contribute. But at no point would we tell the local law enforcement, we got it from here, you guys take off. It's always a team effort. And so even for the tactical team, there are state and local tactical teams. So if it's appropriate for them to do something, that's perfectly fine. I mean, what we usually brought to the table was a knowledge of weapons of mass destruction. So to be able to go into a scene that might be radioactive, have a dirty bomb, have chemical weapons, and be able to clear and fight and provide medical aid while wearing all the chemical suit and respirators. So we could bring that, and usually we'd say, well, we can do this. We can go into this room full of poison gas and secure the crime scene and rescue people and arrest the people that we have warrants for and rescue the people that might be in there. And they'd say, great, do that, please do that. So that's the number one thing I see media getting wrong is the FBI showing up and saying, we're here now, everybody out of our way.
The media loves to play that.
Yeah.
Like the FBI think they're so cool and they're coming in. And why do you think that is? Is it just because the standards to get into the FBI are so rigorous? Not to say that they're not difficult to be in the sheriff's office or to be a city police or whatever, but where do you think that comes from?
I think part of it comes from it's just a trope at this point. It's just that's FBI agents wear suits, they're attorneys and accountants, they're cocky, they're going to take over the crime scene. And since it's been seen like that in so many books and movies and shows, it's just easy for a writer to add that part to their story by saying, we'll have FBI portray the antagonistic law enforcement agency. But I can also see when I was an OSI agent, I looked up to FBI agents, but I also was looking for them to be cocky and condescending. And when I started working joint cases with the local FBI guys, and they were great and treated me like a peer, and we worked as a team, I thought, man, you guys aren't anything like I thought. And I told them that. This is not. So then for the rest of my career in the FBI, when I worked with an agency that didn't have much exposure to the FBI, the number one comment I got is, you guys aren't anything like I thought. It was very much of you guys are pretty cool after all. I thought we just have to spend all the time that we can getting past this trope that the FBI shows up and commandeers and orders people around.
So where do they get it right then?
I think they get it right that when the FBI shows up, that we can bring ridiculous resources really fast. And I think that's good for our nation that we have one agency that we can say, we need a biochemist and we need something that can disarm a nuclear bomb. We need a surveillance aircraft. We need to talk to someone we need satellite imagery from this agency right now. And to see that kind of stuff happen is pretty amazing. There were days where I got down on the job where I was just like, man, another report to write, another court where I have to testify. And then we'd have a big case and you would see the Bureau rally these enormous resources all at once we worked a kidnapping here in Oklahoma where we just said, we need to find this guy's phone number. And then we want to see every tower that it's pinged off of. And we want someone to draw a line of those towers. And we want his credit cards. We want to know the last time he used all those credit cards. We want video from all of those gas stations. We want a surveillance aircraft up. We want every police department from Oklahoma to Texas to get an alert in the next 10 minutes. We found this little girl who's legitimately been kidnapped. He completely intended to never bring her home. And I saw the Bureau rally these resources in a day and bring her home. And I just thought, that's the stuff I think the media gets right. Is when the FBI shows up with helicopters and enormous numbers of people and just to get experts at your fingertip, I'm proud of that. The FBI really does. They recruit so that we have every expert on staff somewhere.
Yeah, that's really cool. What case was that?
It was out of Stillwater, which is where I spent most of my career. That guy got a life sentence. He actually will never leave jail. And he had enticed the mother to let him start taking her grade school kid to Branson on dates. She went to jail. And then she actually started when she went missing, the thing that was scary was mom didn't know where she was, sister didn't know where she was. Everybody said she left with this guy. Then there were stories about how they would go to Branson on dates. And then it turns out he didn't show up at his job. He packed up his stuff. It very much was he. And when we did find him, we found him in Houston. I actually went down to Houston to see the case through. He had suitcases full of stuff that a little girl shouldn't see. And she's I know who she is, and she's a grown woman now. I'm very proud of that case. The jury was not having that, and they gave him life for what he did. But it was cool to work. When we told the local law enforcement, hey, we're going to jump into this both feet, they said, okay, great.
Because it had crossed state lines?
Yeah. Yeah, and kidnappings, we assume it crosses state lines. That's the way the law is sort of set up, is that for the benefit of the child, we should probably right off the bat assume it crosses state lines. Because if we don't, and we hesitate, and we wait a few days to have sufficient evidence that it's interstate, now we're days behind on rescuing a little kid. So from the outset, we'll just say, listen, this is a very solid kid. And this isn't like a parental kidnapping or a runaway. Someone kidnapped a child. We'll start looking nationwide from the outset.
Yeah, because it's pretty rare to actually have a stranger kidnapping, right? But he wasn't a stranger. He was a friend. So you've dialed into that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
That must have felt amazing, because usually those cases don't end like that.
It was amazing. It was amazing. And it was cool that I was in Houston. So our sister team in Houston, SWAT team, actually did the assault. He was in a family member's apartment. And once we were certain he was in the apartment, they did a full assault. And I actually am not going to tell you what they saw when they got there, but to see the SWAT team be the resolution. So these supposedly big, bad, tough, mean guys, they were happy with what they did and brokenhearted with what they saw. But it was the big, tough warriors that were not only snipers and assaulters, but trained medics and trained interviewers. A lot of them, like me, had worked a lot of child crimes. To see them carry her out as her rescuer was like probably one of the most amazing things I could have imagined. I never would have thought I would see as an FBI SWAT operator was, and I have done that in my own operations. I write a little bit in the book about rescuing children locked in closets. And that's not the part they show in the movies.
Okay, first of all, when you say assaulters, is that the people who storm the doors?
Yeah, SWAT operators who everyone starts out as an assaulter, but it sounds like a mean word, but it just means that you're proficient in opening doors and getting inside a place and securing prisoners and rescuing victims. So you have rescued a lot of children. Some, yeah. There's children. I literally, in the book, I talk about one of my teammates whose nickname was Dangler. We were looking for a drug dealer, and he was gone, but his children were locked in the closet. And there's several instances of, there was a cartel safe house where a child was kept locked in a fifth wheel behind the house with a guard. And there's a lot of, I carried around a bunch of stuffed animals and candy in my assault kit with my armor and my radio and my guns and everything, because so many times we'd come across an abandoned or abused child and we're terrifying, right? We're these green-eyed giants yelling their parents' name as we stomp down the hallway with assault rifles. But I had them sometimes cling to my neck like I was the best thing they'd ever seen, like not let go of me, and just have to carry them out and sit them down on the edge of the truck and get a stuffed animal and just wait for them to sort of detox from the moment so that we can get them to a caretaker.
I mean, that's got to be such a huge emotional thing on so many levels. Yeah. When you talked about earlier about not having a big father figure in your life and being the protector. Like, I mean, I'm just seeing you run in there. That's got to feel like healing on one hand, but then also really, really tough on another. You don't let that go when you just go home, you know?
No, right. I like the way you said that. I think it was not something I thought I would be doing, but also therapeutic and cathartic to be part of something as powerful and capable of violence as we were, to have opportunities to rescue and save.
Yeah, because World War II, this is something that I love thinking about. The guys on the Jeeps would have their rations of chocolate and give it to the people when they come. And those were memories that people like solidified the marketing brand for the Jeep around the world.
Absolutely.
That just the simple kindness of a piece of candy and, saving their lives, obviously. It's a pretty powerful thing, this simple thing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it worked in your case too, where, you were their hero. That's like, makes me happy for you.
Thank you.
Your story is really cool, and I'm excited about telling it. So
You're very kind. Thank you.
before I let you go, I want to recommend Jeremy's new book titled Send Me, available on Amazon. Up next, Criminal Mischief bonus content. Here, my co-host, Brandon Morgan, and I will discuss my interview with Jeremy in more detail. And as always, thanks for listening. From Pie in the Sky Media, Criminal Mischief is an EVO production, recorded live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. We're produced by Brandon Morgan and myself, music by Soundstripe. For EVO Creative, I'm Carolyn Ossorio, your writer and host.